Hey, this is David. The restaurant glows under warm, amber lights. Each table is set with precision, crisp white linens, sparkling glasses, and candles flickering in the dim. It's the kind of place where you need a reservation weeks in advance. I'd made mine too. I'm seated near the window, the city skyline sprawling beyond the glass. My shirt is freshly pressed, my tie neatly knotted. I spot Olivia the moment she walks in. Her dress is a deep blue, elegant but not flashy, the hem brushing her knees as she strides in confidently. Her heels barely make a sound on the carpeted floor, but she might as well be on a runway. She sees me and smiles, one of those small, practiced smiles that hints at politeness but leaves you wondering. David? I stand, returning her smile. Olivia. You look amazing. Her lips twitch, not quite a laugh but close. You clean up pretty well yourself. We settle into our seats, and the waiter appears almost instantly, offering us menus and wine recommendations. Olivia scans the options quickly and orders a Pinot Grigio. I follow her lead. The first moments are smooth, easy. We talk about the usual first date stuff, work, hobbies, favorite movies. Her voice has a rhythm to it, calm and measured, with just enough enthusiasm to keep me leaning in. She talks with her hands, her bracelets catching the light with every gesture. So, she says, tilting her head, what made you pick this place? I figured it's nice to start off strong. I reply, grinning. And honestly, their steak is legendary. Steak guy. Good to know. Her laugh is soft, almost musical, and for a moment, I think I'm nailing this. The waiter returns with our wine, pouring it with the sort of ceremony that makes me feel out of place. Olivia thanks him with a nod, then raises her glass. To what? A good evening? To a good evening, I echo, clinking my glass against hers. She sips, her eyes scanning the room briefly before returning to me. So, David, tell me, what do you do when you're not impressing women at fancy restaurants? The question throws me off, but I chuckle. I try not to embarrass myself too much at work. Sales can be brutal. Oh, you're in sales, she says, leaning slightly forward. Bet you've got stories. I give her a few highlights, nothing too revealing, just enough to keep the conversation lively. She listens, her chin resting on her hand, her expression attentive. Our food arrives, her salmon plated like art, my steak sizzling slightly as the plate lands. Wow, she murmurs, eyeing her dish. They don't mess around here, do they? They really don't. I agree, cutting into my steak. For a while, it's quiet, the only sounds between us the clink of cutlery and murmured compliments about the food. It feels easy, natural. She's poised but not stiff, and I start to relax. Her dress catches the light as she shifts in her seat, leaning back slightly, her eyes meeting mine. So far, you've got good taste in restaurants, she says, a teasing edge to her tone. Let's see if the conversation holds up. I laugh, shaking my head. No pressure, right? None at all. Her smile widens, and I find myself thinking this might actually go somewhere. But the way her fingers brush her phone on the table hints at something, a subtle shift I don't quite catch. For now, though, the atmosphere hums with potential. The hum of the restaurant is a comfortable backdrop, the clink of glasses, the low murmur of conversations, the occasional burst of laughter from a nearby table. Olivia rests her chin on her hand, her wine glass poised in the other, as I finish a story about a particularly challenging client. You handled that pretty well, she says, her lips curling into a small smile. I can see why you're in sales. Thanks, I reply, feeling a little swell of pride. It's rare to connect like this on a first date, where the conversation feels natural, not forced. She sets her glass down and shifts in her seat, reaching into her clutch. My mind barely registers it at first, just a quick move, no big deal. But when she pulls out her phone and unlocks it, her focus shifts completely. Sorry, 1 second, she says, her tone light but her eyes glued to the screen. I just need to check something. Sure, I say, caught off guard. I pick up my wine glass, taking a slow sip, trying to ignore the sudden disconnect. Her fingers move quickly, tapping, scrolling. The glow of the phone reflects off her face, softening the sharp angles of her features. At first, I think it's a text or maybe an email, something quick. But a minute passes, then another. Everything okay? I ask, leaning forward slightly. Oh, yeah, she says without looking up. Just doing some quick math. Math? My mind stumbles over the word. Math? I echo, the confusion slipping into my voice. She glances up briefly, as if the answer should be obvious. Yeah, I like to keep track of things. You know, expenses, costs. Helps me stay organized. Organized. The word hangs in the air like a stray thread. I nod slowly, unsure of what to say. Her attention is back on the screen, her thumb scrolling, the occasional furrow in her brows showing she's deep in thought. I try to focus on my food, cutting into my steak, but the easy rhythm of the evening feels disrupted. Every few moments, I glance up at her, waiting for the phone to go away, for her attention to come back. Interesting, she mutters, half to herself. What is? I ask, more out of reflex than curiosity. She sets the phone down, screen still lit, and looks at me with a mix of curiosity and calculation. Did you know their markup on wine is nearly 300%? I mean, it's standard for places like this, but still, kinda steep. I blink, unsure how to respond. I guess? I've never really thought about it. It's fascinating when you break it down. She continues, tapping her fingers lightly on the table. Like this salmon, don't get me wrong, it's delicious, but I bet the wholesale cost is less than a third of what they're charging. She's animated now, her earlier warmth replaced by something sharper, more analytical. It's like a switch flipped, and I'm not sure where the person I was talking to earlier has gone. I set my fork down, forcing a smile. You, do this often? Only when it's interesting, she says, waving her hand dismissively. Don't mind me. I just like numbers. They tell you so much about the world. Her phone buzzes softly, and she picks it up again, her focus narrowing back to the screen. I sit there, staring at her, trying to process the sudden shift. The warmth from earlier feels like it's been replaced with something cold, almost clinical. I glance around the room, half expecting someone to be watching this strange turn of events, but everyone is caught up in their own meals, their own dates. I feel the weight of the silence between us growing heavier. Sorry, she says again, not sounding sorry at all. This is just how my brain works. Numbers are kind of my thing. No problem, I say, though my voice betrays the discomfort creeping in. She looks up, catching the tone, and tilts her head slightly. Am I weirding you out? Not weirding me out, I lie, forcing another smile. Just wasn't expecting a math lesson tonight. She laughs softly, a sound that doesn't quite reach her eyes. Fair enough. I'll put the phone away. She slides it into her clutch, but the atmosphere doesn't snap back to what it was. The moment has shifted, and no amount of effort seems to smooth over the edges. I pick up my glass, taking another sip, hoping the wine might soften the awkwardness. She does the same, her gaze drifting to the candle on the table. Anyway, she says, her tone light but distant. Where were we? I want to say, I have no idea. But instead I smile, nodding slightly. I think you were about to tell me your most embarrassing work story. Her lips twitch into a half smile, and she launches into a story, but the spark from earlier feels dimmer now. The phone is gone, but the mood has changed, and I'm not sure how to get it back. The fork pauses midway to my mouth as Olivia's voice cuts through the soft hum of the restaurant. So, she says, her tone casual but her eyes locked onto me with precision. How much do you make in a year? I blink. Excuse me? Your salary. She clarifies, leaning forward slightly, as if I hadn't heard her. Ballpark figure. 6 figures, I assume? The steak on my fork feels suddenly heavy, and I lower it back to my plate. That's a bit personal, don't you think? She waves a hand dismissively, her bracelets jangling softly. Oh, come on. We're both adults here. No need to be shy. Shy isn't the word. Stunned, maybe? Flustered. The shift in her tone, from conversational to calculated, feels jarring. I glance around, half wondering if I've wandered into some strange social experiment. I do all right, I say, keeping my tone even. All right? She echoes, tilting her head as if studying me. All right can mean a lot of things. Are we talking comfortably paying the bills all right or investing in real estate all right? I pick up my glass, taking a measured sip of wine. Comfortably paying the bills. She nods, her fingers tracing the edge of her plate. And savings? How's that looking? Are you the rainy day fund type or the crypto and stocks type? This is unreal. I can feel my pulse quickening, my brain scrambling for a response that won't sound defensive. I have some savings. Enough to get by. She leans back in her chair, folding her arms. Enough to get by, she repeats, her tone thoughtful. That's vague. Do you not track your finances? Her question hangs in the air like a challenge, and for a moment I'm at a loss. The easy banter from earlier has evaporated, replaced by this unnerving cross-examination. I track enough to know I'm not in trouble, I say finally, forcing a tight smile. Her lips curve into something that isn't quite a smile. Interesting approach. Personally, I believe in spreadsheets. Everything in one place: income, expenses, investments. It's the best way to stay on top of things. That's very organized of you. I manage. She doesn't seem to notice the edge in my voice. What about this dinner? She asks, gesturing around the table. How do you budget for things like this? Do you have a dining out category, or is this more of a spontaneous splurge? I stare at her, my mind racing to process the question. I don't really have a category for that. She hums, tapping her chin thoughtfully. So no set budget. Do you track how much you spend on dates in general? I'm guessing it adds up if you're dining at places like this. The words hang heavy between us, and I can feel the heat rising to my face. I don't think about it like that, I say, my tone sharper than I intended. She raises an eyebrow. Why not? It's practical. Relationships require investment, time, energy, and yes, money. Don't you think it's important to know where you stand financially before getting serious with someone? This is a date, I want to scream. Not a financial seminar. But instead I take a slow breath, trying to steady myself. I suppose it's important, but I wasn't expecting to break it down tonight. She shrugs, unapologetic. It's better to be upfront. People waste too much time avoiding the tough conversations. Tough conversations? I repeat, my voice tight. About my income and budgeting habits? She tilts her head, her expression calm, almost clinical. It's not personal. It's practical. I mean, what if we started dating seriously? Wouldn't you want to know if we're financially compatible? We're not even halfway through dinner, I say, unable to keep the frustration out of my voice. She laughs softly, a sound that feels more dismissive than amused. You're right. I'm getting ahead of myself. But honestly, I think financial compatibility is just as important as chemistry. Don't you agree? I don't answer immediately, letting the question hang between us. My appetite is gone, replaced by a gnawing discomfort I can't shake. The candlelight flickers, casting long shadows across the table, and I can't help but wonder how the night derailed so completely. Finally, I clear my throat, forcing a calm I don't feel. I think some things are better discussed later, once there's more to build on. Her smile is thin, almost patronizing. Fair enough. But it's good to know where you stand. The rest of the meal stretches out like an eternity, her probing questions punctuating the silence. She asks about my credit score, my retirement plan, even whether I rent or own. Each question feels like another brick in the wall growing between us, and by the time the plates are cleared, I feel like I've been audited instead of courted. I lean back in my chair, trying to put some space between us. Olivia's voice fills the air, her words relentless, sharp, and precise. Every question slices through the thin veil of politeness I'm desperately trying to hold on to. Do you have a 401k? Roth IRA? Traditional IRA? Her fork hovers midair as she asks, like she's discussing dessert options rather than dissecting my financial life. I swallow hard, my throat dry. I have a 401k. Employer match? She fires back. Yes, I say, my voice clipped. She nods, satisfied for a moment, but it's fleeting. The silence that follows isn't a reprieve. It's her gearing up for the next round. I shift in my seat, trying to escape the heat rising in my chest. My palms press against the edge of the table, steadying me as I struggle to match her unwavering intensity. Do you contribute the max annually? She presses. I contribute enough, I say flatly, trying to dodge the specificity she craves. Her brow furrows, a subtle twitch of dissatisfaction. She's not getting the data she wants, and it's starting to show. The weight of the evening settles on my shoulders like a heavy cloak. My attempts to redirect the conversation earlier had failed miserably, and now the tension feels almost tangible, pressing down on me, suffocating. I glance at her, hoping for a glimpse of the woman I'd been laughing with just an hour ago. But her eyes are calculating, her focus unwavering. There's no trace of the easy charm she had when we first sat down. My fingers tighten around the stem of my wine glass as I try again. So, Olivia, what about you? What kind of hobbies do you have? She barely glances up, her attention locked on the mental spreadsheet she seems to be building. Oh, I stay busy. But honestly, hobbies don't matter much when it comes to compatibility. Finances do. My grip loosens, and the glass wobbles slightly. I force it back onto the table, my movements slow and deliberate, an attempt to mask the growing discomfort radiating through me. Her gaze shifts to me, finally, and her expression softens just enough to seem like she's trying to be considerate. You look a little tense. Is this making you uncomfortable? The question feels like a trap. If I say yes, I'm admitting defeat, acknowledging that I can't keep up with her relentless pace. If I say no, I'm inviting her to keep going. I opt for neutral ground. It's not what I expected tonight. She smiles faintly, almost condescending. I get that a lot. But I think it's better to be direct. Life's too short to waste time on the wrong person, you know? Wrong person. The phrase lingers in the air, heavy and damning. My stomach churns, a mix of embarrassment and frustration bubbling beneath the surface. I glance at the other tables, the low hum of laughter and clinking glasses a stark contrast to the charged silence between us. Olivia, I begin, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. This is starting to feel less like a date and more like an interview. Her smile doesn't waver. Well, isn't dating just a series of interviews? We're trying to find the best fit, aren't we? The words hit like a slap, and I feel myself sinking further into my seat. My posture stiffens, my jaw tightens, and my breath comes shallow. I don't know if I should laugh, argue, or simply get up and leave. The power dynamic has shifted entirely. Olivia isn't just steering the conversation, she's taken full control of the evening. I feel like a passenger on a ride I didn't sign up for, every turn sharper than the last. I glance at her again, searching for any sign of self-awareness, any hint that she realizes how off-putting this is. But she's calm, collected, and entirely unapologetic. The air between us is thick with unspoken tension, and I can feel the evening unraveling in slow motion. My mind races with an escape plan, but my body is frozen, caught between politeness and the growing urge to bolt. By the time the server clears our plates, my shoulders are tight with exhaustion. The warmth of the restaurant feels oppressive now, the soft lighting dimming into shadows that mirror the mood at the table. I force a smile, weak and mechanical, as Olivia launches into yet another topic, but the words blur together. All I can think about is how far removed this moment is from what I imagined. This isn't a date. It's a lesson in endurance. The check arrives, sliding onto the table with a quiet thud, but the sound feels deafening. I don't even glance at it. My focus is locked on Olivia, her pen poised above the slip of paper as if she's about to sign a contract. So, she says, tapping the pen against her chin, do you think splitting it evenly makes sense, or should we prorate based on what we ordered? For a moment, I'm too stunned to respond. Splitting the bill? After she dissected my finances and made this entire evening feel like a corporate audit? I sit back, pressing my hands against my thighs to steady myself. My voice, when it finally comes, is low and deliberate. I'll take care of it. She tilts her head, her expression somewhere between amused and analytical. Are you sure? I mean, it's important to establish financial boundaries early on. Boundaries. The word hangs in the air, thick and heavy with implication. I nod stiffly. I've got it. She shrugs, leaning back in her chair as though relinquishing the check is some grand favor. Suit yourself. The server returns, and I hand over my card without hesitation. My movements are mechanical now, driven by the need to end this evening as quickly and cleanly as possible. Thank you, Olivia says, her tone light but devoid of genuine warmth. I manage a tight smile, the effort tugging at the corners of my mouth. Sure. As we gather our things, the air between us feels colder, sharper. The easy rapport we'd shared at the beginning of the evening is long gone, replaced by a suffocating tension. Outside, the city hums with life. The streetlights cast long shadows, and a faint breeze carries the sound of distant laughter from a nearby bar. For a brief moment, I think about suggesting we grab a drink, a last-ditch effort to salvage something from this night. But the thought vanishes as quickly as it came. We stand on the sidewalk, an awkward space between us. Olivia glances at her phone, the glow of the screen illuminating her face. Well, she says, slipping the device into her bag. This was informative. Yeah, I reply, the word dry and hollow. She steps forward, her hand outstretched. A handshake. After all of this, she's offering me a handshake. I take it, her grip firm and businesslike. Thanks for dinner, she says, already turning away. Take care, I mutter, watching her disappear into the crowd. As I walk to my car, the night's events replay in my mind, each moment heavier than the last. The easy charm, the financial interrogation, the clinical detachment. It all feels surreal, like I'd been part of an experiment instead of a date. Sliding into the driver's seat, I exhale deeply. There's no anger, no bitterness. Just an overwhelming sense of relief. Sometimes you meet someone who shows you exactly what you don't want. Tonight, Olivia was that person,